Hey everyone, it's Mark, aka the Movie Buffer, back with a new video today. So today we're going to be taking a look at our very first Godzilla film for this channel. That is, of course, Godzilla vs. Biollante. One of my favorites and one of the, honestly, better entries of the Heisei series that came out in the 80s and 90s. But first, before we dive on in, please, if you have not already, check out that Patreon. I'm going to post a link to it in the description below. There you will find exclusive content and early access videos that will be posted over there well before they make it over here on YouTube. So definitely make sure you head on over there. Lots of cool stuff. I really appreciate all your donations, guys. And if not, no big deal at all. Your support here on YouTube means the world as well. Definitely like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I want to know what kind of movies you guys want to see me review on this channel, so do not be shy about letting me know at all. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So for those who are not familiar with the history of Godzilla, the franchise started in 1954 with the original film simply titled Gojira, which is actually the Japanese pronunciation of the character's name. It was filmed in black and white and was completely in Japanese. Soon after followed an Americanized version of this movie titled Godzilla King of the Monsters. It was more or less the same movie, however had an English dub for the Japanese characters and also included some new footage with American actor Raymond Burr that was inserted into the film. Now, if you're an American Godzilla fan like myself, chances are this is probably the version that you saw growing up. Which is really a shame because compared to the original film, it's not really all that great. Then again, I have seen far worse dubs. I'm looking at you, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. In 1984, a new film titled The Return of Godzilla was released as a direct sequel to the original Gojira. This film ignored all of the previous entries, again aside from the first film, and also brought the franchise back to its roots by having a far darker and more serious tone than basically all of the sequels that came after the original. It was also a solo Godzilla film with no other monsters present. This movie also got an Americanized edition that came out a year later titled Godzilla 1985. Although most of the changes, aside from one big one, if you know, you know, were pretty minor this time around. In 1989, a new Godzilla film was released, which was a direct sequel to both Godzilla 1985 as well as the original film, titled Godzilla vs. Biollante. I was quite familiar with Godzilla and had seen a good chunk of the movies by this time, but I recall seeing the VHS cover of this film at a local video store by me, and being very intrigued by the cover art. It showed the G-Man himself facing off against this giant flower with teeth that reminded me of another awesome 80s flick I loved as a kid, Little Shop of Horrors. The box art almost gave me sort of creature feature vibes, which I was and still am a huge fan of. And being that I was already a big Kaiju and Godzilla fan by then, this sounded like a film that was meant for me. For whatever reason though, I decided not to even rent it and didn't see it until I bought the movie on Amazon some years ago. I don't recall if there was a subtitled version or not, but my dumbass of course picked the English dub version to watch. And all I gotta say is, holy shit, this English dub has some of the most batshit insane dialogue and line deliveries.
This is it. Damn, we are the lethal weapon!
It's not even that the dub acting is bad, which it is, but some of the lines they gave the characters are just completely nonsensical and crazy.
Kiss you guys.
What is with this dialogue? Like things that no sane human being would ever say in a situation like this. The movie picks up exactly where the previous film left off following the events of Godzilla 1985. Some American soldiers are inspecting the aftermath of the attack on Tokyo and find a sample of Godzilla's skin that they hope to take back to the States in order to weaponize.
Okay, we've got a Godzilla cell.
And we also have a British man playing an American soldier. Unfortunately, a Middle Eastern dictator has also sent his own secret agent in the hopes of apprehending the sample before the Americans do. And I gotta say, while some of the editing and music choice may seem a bit odd and abrupt at times, we actually get a nice little shootout sequence in a Godzilla movie. Who knew? Hey guys, look here! I seriously have no idea what that dude was saying. And this happens quite a few times throughout this film, anytime there are American actors on screen. Or characters that are supposed to be American anyhow. It seems like sometimes they're using dub actors for the English-speaking actors, which is really odd because they're not speaking in a foreign language, they're still speaking English. And this is in the Japanese version of the film as well, which seems odd considering you could just have dubbed their voices over with Japanese actors, but instead they kept the English-speaking lines and put Japanese subtitles in place. So, the plot of this movie is basically revolved around a genetically mutated plant named Biolante, which was created by a Japanese scientist using a sample of a rose, as well as DNA from both Godzilla and his recently deceased daughter, who was killed during a bomb attack on his lab from American terrorists. Long story short, the scientists and military have created this monster in the hopes of taking down Godzilla, whom, as you guessed, is rampaging through Tokyo once again. This movie also brings back the Super X, a flying advanced vehicle that uses a high-powered mirror to reflect Godzilla's atomic breath back at him. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to do much damage at all, and only really serves to piss him off even more. So the two American spies we saw earlier, as well as the Seradian agent, break into Dr. Kirishima's lab in the hopes of stealing the Godzilla cells. Unfortunately, they have a run-in with one giant pissed-off plant. Fast forward some time later, the now fully formed kaiju plant has escaped into a nearby river where she has sprouted into a giant 30-story rose. I know, maybe she's not all that impressive just yet, but give her some time, you'll see. If nothing else, I can say that this giant plant at least makes for some very impressive practical effects. I gotta say, it's really interesting seeing Americans be portrayed as villains in a movie. The American terrorists here have planted explosives around Mount Mira and basically blackmailed Japan, warning that the explosives will be detonated and therefore free Godzilla if the cells are not handed over. Of course, everything goes haywire, the explosives are detonated, and Godzilla is freed. I know. I had to cut off the Godzilla theme early, I'm sorry. But Toho and Warner Bros. Would be all over my ass if I didn't. Also, this is not just any old mountain, but a volcano, and Godzilla has been sleeping in it. How badass is that? There's also a really random and just downright bizarre cameo from Japanese musician Demon Kaka, which, hearing this guy's voice in the English dub version was an absolute trip because they for some reason made him sound like a fucking pirate. So we get our usual military versus Godzilla sequences that consist of the military shooting a bunch of bullets that are basically like paper cuts to Godzilla, along with some missiles that don't do shit either. Godzilla blasts his atomic ray a bunch of times, destroying several vehicles in the process. But hey, it's still good shit, so I'm not complaining. I gotta say though, this upbeat and chipper music doesn't exactly spell doomsday. Godzilla's about to attack Tokyo. And oh shit, did I accidentally put on the Japanese version of Jaws by accident? No, just kidding. This is Biollante, who is now sporting several Venus flytrap-like tentacles. Sensing Godzilla's approach, Biollante begins to grow agitated, and it looks like the G-Man himself has finally arrived. So get ready for our first all-out monster war. It's a very brief but still fun fight, where Biollante attempts to choke out Godzilla with her tentacles, which does not work very well, and then she sprays some acid on him. He blasts her a bunch of times with his atomic breath, and honestly, she kinda gets her ass kicked, I'm not gonna lie. But who knows, maybe her toothy appendages can be of some help here. So, with Biollante presumed dead and Godzilla still at large, our characters depart in an attempt to find a better way to get rid of the Big G.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Dr. Shiragami is the one.
It's Godzilla.
I mean, I get it, my dude, but the giant 300-foot radioactive lizard outside does kind of present an issue here. Goddamn radioactive lizards always fucking up my assassinations. So Godzilla continues his rampage through the city, and we're treated to a lot of crumbling buildings, explosions, and some pretty cool model work and miniature sets. Fun fact, the suit that was used in this movie was far more advanced than the previous ones. It actually weighed 242 pounds and proved to be more comfortable, but also rather cumbersome at the same time. In spite of this, it was still lighter weight and had a lower center of gravity as well as more mobile legs than the previously used Godzilla suits. There was also a second 176-pound suit that was built for the underwater sequences. The head size was reduced and the whites around Godzilla's eyes were removed. This was also around the time when Toho was starting to incorporate more animatronic effects into its Godzilla movies, as seen here by this awesome shot where Godzilla rears his head back and opens his mouth to roar. The new animatronic used here was quite advanced and featured an articulated tongue and eyeballs as well.
薬は注射より飲むのに限るぜ。ゴジラさん。
Also, maybe don't turn your back to a 300-foot lizard. See, this is what happens when you shit-talk Godzilla. So the military attempts once again to kill Godzilla by luring him into a field that is filled with mines. But these aren't just any old mines. These are filled with microwave-emitted plates that when stepped on will presumably zap Godzilla out of existence. As is the case in literally every Godzilla movie ever to have existed, the military's weapons prove to be pretty much useless against the big guy. But wait, it looks like Biollante has returned, and what's more is she has evolved into an even larger and more terrifying form. And you know, it's really interesting seeing a monster that makes Godzilla look small. Our fight goes on a little bit longer this time around, with a lot more aggression to it as well. It looks like Godzilla has the upper hand at first, as he blasts Biollante several times with his atomic breath, doing quite a bit of damage to her. But she's not going down without a fight, and has more than a few tricks up her sleeve this time. Oh, you think plants can't run, huh, bitch? Well, I'll show you. So, Biollante attacks Godzilla with her tendrils and vines again, and the Venus flytrap-looking mouse attempt to bite him. One even spears him right through the hand in a really gnarly close-up shot. Biollante also sprays Godzilla with a mouthful of acid. Ouchie. Then she straight up tries to eat him. Thankfully, the G-Man knows exactly how to get out of situations like this. Yeah, that didn't really end too well for her. Also, can I just say how sick the design for this final form of Biollante looks? I mean, I freaking love it. It's up there with Ghidorah, Mothra, Rodan, all of the classic monsters for me.
ついにやったな。これで実用化のめどはついた。あとは遺伝子をサンプリングして生産ラインに載せるだけだ。
私はもう甲殻バクテリアもビオランテも作りません。
Unfortunately, Biollante's not feeling so hot. It looks like Godzilla's atomic breath really did a number on her. So she explodes in a fireball of flames and pixie dust. And I guess Erica's soul was apparently living inside of this plant because we see a quick image of her face float up into the sky. I really don't care for that part. Honestly, it kind of ruins the ending a little bit for me. Alright, well maybe ruin is a bit too strong of a word to use here. But it definitely lessens the effect of the really epic battle that we just saw, as well as kind of dampens the effect of making you feel sympathetic for Biollante's character. It just comes off a little bit too corny for my taste, and I don't feel like it was really needed. I don't know, maybe I'm nitpicking here. What do you guys think? Unfortunately, this victory is short-lived as Dr. Kirishima takes a bullet to the chest. So, a chase ensues between Dr. Shiragami's colleague here, Kirishima, and the Seradian agent. It ends when the agent drives off the cliff like a dumbass right onto the beach and wrecks his vehicle. Thank God for these microwave-emitting plates, though, because the assassin manages to step on one just as it's being pressed by one of the characters in the control room. Well, looks like Godzilla has woken from his nap, so time to GTFO. So, happy ending. Godzilla goes back to the ocean, Biollante back to the skies, and all our characters get to live happily ever after. Well, except for the Doctor. He's still dead, of course. So, sorta happy ending? Anyway, that was Godzilla vs. Biollante, and it's actually pretty damn good. Of course, this is taking into account the fact that some folks may judge this film a little bit harshly based on the effects. I mean, it's a Godzilla film. Yes, the effects are definitely more advanced in this one, which is one element I really did appreciate about the film. However, Japan seemed like it was still a few years behind the US in terms of special effects, so I will cut this film a break because of that. There's also a subplot about this psychic girl that can read Biollante and Godzilla's mind. I didn't really go over it in my commentary because it's probably one of my least favorite parts of this film, and one element that I feel really did not fit in with the rest of the story. Now, I know I kind of ragged on this movie a little bit for the effects being a tad dated, but for a Godzilla film, I do have to say I was particularly impressed by the practical effects in this film, especially when it came to the articulation on Godzilla's animatronic. Biollante was also really well designed, both in her rose form and in her final form, which I much prefer. Not only is her design really sick, but the practical animatronic effects used for her were also very well done and impressive. The attack sequences and fight scenes were also really well shot, with many of them being filmed at night, and with a lot more close-up shots being used this time. One could argue that there are a few too many subplots floating around in this film. I mean, we have the whole ordeal with the doctor coping with the death of his daughter, the creation of Biollante, of course Godzilla, the Godzilla and Biollante fighting one another. We also have the subplot with the American spies and the Seradian agent trying to apprehend the Godzilla cells. Yeah, you could say that there's a lot going on in this film, but it manages to work. It all resolves itself very well at the end. So, did you need that many different subplots in one film? Maybe not, but they were all wrapped up pretty nice and neatly at the film's climax, so I personally did not mind that. One honest criticism I can give the film would probably be its score, as the choice of music, while very epic, especially here in the classic Godzilla theme during those sequences, it comes off way too upbeat and adventurous, especially for a film that is definitely trying to take a more dark and mature approach with its monsters and its storyline. At the end of the day, this one was fun, and despite its flaws, I would still give it a solid 8 out of 10. If you're a Godzilla fan already and have not seen this one, Godzilla vs. Biollante is definitely a must-see. And if you're not, but are thinking about it, of course, because why else would you be watching this video if you weren't, this would not be a bad place to start, although I'd personally recommend seeing Godzilla 85, or The Return of Godzilla if you prefer the undubbed version. Well guys, that about wraps it up for this one. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And like I said earlier, feel free to make suggestions about any movies or movie topics you'd like to see me cover on this channel. I am always open to suggestions and love interacting with my fans, so do just that. And until next time, this has been the Movie Buffer. Ciao for now, guys.